What if I told you the decades long struggle between pursuing long term growth and achieving short term sales is rooted in a myth, and going broad for the brand and targeted for performance is wrong? According to new research from TransUnion and MMA Global, you can achieve your short term goals without sacrificing long term sustainable growth with a single audience strategy by focusing on the group of consumers most receptive to your advertising, your brand's movable middles. Don't waste another dollar on audiences who won't respond to your ads. To learn more, download TransUnion's new white paper at transunion.com/mm.
Hi, I'm Jillian Follett, a social media and influencer marketing reporter at Ad Age, and welcome to this week's edition of the Marketer's Brief podcast, a weekly discussion of marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. 2024 is drawing to a close, and with it, another year of social media trends that influenced both the marketing industry and the larger pop culture landscape. Today, I'm joined by Casey Lewis, author of Youth Trends newsletter After School, to take a look back at some of the most viral trends of 2024, from Brat Summer to the man in finance trend. Hey Casey, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, so I feel like for this conversation, it makes sense to just kind of start from the beginning of 2024 and kind of walk our way through to the end. So one of the first trends of the year, which I thought would happened last year since it feels like it's been forever that it happened, but the Sephora Kids phenomenon that kind of happened at the very start of 2024. And there was all these kids like going into the Sephora stores and like people were saying they were like messing up the displays of like the Drunk Elephant products and stuff like that. What did you make of that trend?
Yeah, the Sephora tween, kids splurging on skincare thing, it seemed like it really reached a fever pitch in like January, February. And I think part of that is because so many of these tweens got beauty products and skincare products for Christmas and then
Mhm.
shared it on TikTok via like Christmas haul talks.
Mhm.
I think it's a largely like a little fear-mongery as a headline. I think that kids and especially that age, that sort of like tween age, they've always been really interested in grooming and primping. I mean, I played with my mom's makeup. And so I think Sephora and Ulta and also platforms like TikTok make these things so much more accessible. But I
Mhm.
don't think that there's any like, I think the whole like tweens taking over the beauty aisles and causing havoc in Sephora was just like a little overblown. But I do think as like a consumer insight, it's super interesting because a Gen Alpha is emerging as an important consumer.
Yeah, I do agree. It was definitely a little over dramatized, but I'm very guilty of watching those haul videos. That's like my favorite part of the holiday season.
I mean, a lot of those kids have more insight into what products we should be using, or like I learn about products from like literally 12-year-olds.
Yeah, they have better skincare routines than me, honestly. I also thought it was interesting how some of these brands like Drunk Elephant, Bubble Skincare, and Kiehl's, they all kind of like responded to the phenomenon by like talking about which of their products were like safe for younger skin and just that whole like brand response. I don't know if we've seen something like that in terms of like one of these like online trends.
Yeah, I thought that was super smart just because a lot of times I think parents don't know what is okay and what isn't. And I think that was a really smart marketing move to kind of get ahead of it.
And I guess speaking of people rushing into stores to buy a bunch of things, I think it was early January, maybe later or early February, that was like kind of the peak of the Stanley Cup craze and all the videos of people like lined up at 3 a.m. outside of a Target to get like those like red and pink Valentine's colors. Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting trend that took off this year.
Yeah, to me, the Sephora tweens and the Stanley Tumbler kids are like the same breed, you know? But yeah, I think that with the Stanley thing, I couldn't stop thinking about how, or I'm older than you, but, growing up obsessed with Beanie Babies are probably a little bit before your time.
I had Beanie Babies,
Okay,
but I was
okay.
little though.
Yeah. But just wanting to collect them all and feeling, I had them on display in my room and it felt like such an exciting thing to have a collection of. And
Mhm.
in many ways, the Stanley Tumbler trend seemed similar to that, where it's like people just there's that sense of accomplishment when you have all of these pretty things to look at. And at the end of the day, that trend was so interesting because it wasn't really about the water bottle, it was
No.
about like the status item. And it's funny to see now, almost 12 months later, that no one is really talking about Stanleys, at least not in the like feverish way that they were. Did
Hmm.
you get one?
I have one, but it wasn't like at the peak of the craziness. Maybe I was like a Stanley hipster and I had one before they were
Yeah.
cool.
You were ahead of the trend. You maybe
Yeah,
started the trend.
maybe. Yeah, maybe I was the cause. I also thought it was interesting. There was some like criticism I remember seeing kind of at when it was at a fever pitch of people being like, these are like reusable water bottles. Like, why do you have 20 of them? It sort of like speaks to the underconsumption trend that we saw kind of take off the middle of this year, where people were kind of pushing back against having excessive numbers of the same product and stuff like that. It's sort of like maybe a backlash almost to some of that craziness around collecting all the cups.
Yeah, totally. 'Cause the whole thing about a reusable water bottle is that it is supposed to be good for the environment. And then when you have 100 of them, it's no longer quite so good.
And I think you wrote about this in your newsletter, but I feel like since the craziness around Stanley did kind of like gradually die off earlier this year, some other water bottle brands have kind of stepped in for Gen Z, like Awala. I know all my friends have Awalas. It's kind of
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
how every few months there's a new water bottle brand that's like the hot new accessory.
Yeah, the Owala definitely seems to have kind of unseated the Stanley as the like it water bottle, and especially a bunch of Owalas. I think maybe they're limited edition colorways, maybe not even limited edition, but they're found at Urban Outfitters. I see lots of
Mhm.
girls going specifically to Urban Outfitters so that they can get the Owalas in specific colorways.
I wanted the bow one, the one that had the light blue bows, but I feel like those ones all
Yes,
sell out so quickly.
so quickly. They're so cute.
Yeah, they're so coquette, very demure,
Yes, yes.
which we'll get to. Yeah, but I think after Stanley, the next one I remember is Risa Tisa's "Who the Fuck Did I Marry" series, and kind of like the reaction to that, like everyone talking about it like it was like a TV show almost. And it will be soon. It's going to be made a TV show. But it was interesting how when it was still a social media series, everyone was talking about it like it was like the latest drama TV show they were tuning into.
Yeah, the thing that I loved most about that is anytime a creator is changing or sort of creating their own format, which not that no one had done the, sort of chapter or like serialized installments before her, but
Hmm.
that seemed to be the one that got the most attention. And it's really interesting to think about, even in looking ahead to 2025, how we might bend these platforms a bit to create different kinds of content. I think it also speaks to, we're not watching TV as much. And so TikTok really is serving the purpose of that, mini episodes.
Hmm.
I'm really, really interested to see what people are doing next year with these sort of series and not just creators, but also, corporations are thinking about how they can engage with these formats too.
Yeah, I just wrote a story about this recently, but Amazon sponsored the new series of Boy Room, that social media series.
Mhm.
And I feel like we're going to see a lot more of that next year just because that's what people are watching, at least Gen Z and probably older Gen Alpha, watching a lot of these like made for social media series.
Yes, Boilerroom is truly one of my favorite series on TikTok. I can't like I will watch those episodes over and over again. I think Rachel the host is so funny and I think they just really understand internet culture. I mean, Adam Faze is very much like an internet native and obsessive and I think it
Mhm.
shows in his work, but I think it's so smart that Amazon is sponsoring that series.
Yeah. I think after Risa Tisa, Man in Finance is the next one I remember, which I had in my head for like a solid month. I would just be walking around my apartment and like it would be playing in my head.
Yeah, I had a love-hate relationship with that because I'm curious, Jillian, like I remember scrolling TikTok one day as I do all the time, and I
Hmm.
came across that video. And you have that gut feeling now, when you
Hmm.
spend a lot of time on TikTok where you see something and you're like, oh God, this is gonna be big. Like
Uh-huh.
this is gonna be very big. And I remember thinking like this is going to be ubiquitous very quickly. And in fact it was, but I think even, that feeling of like, oh God, this is like the beginning of something. I couldn't have guessed that it would become as enormous as it was. Like DJs playing it at clubs. Like
Yeah.
it was so crazy. But I'm curious, do you remember coming across it on TikTok, or like how did you, where were you when you came across this trend?
Where was I when it happened? I did come across it on TikTok. I don't know if it was Megan Boney, the creator, if I saw her video initially or like
Uh-huh.
another video using the audio, but it was definitely like in
Yeah.
my feed and like I scrolled past it not really thinking it would blow up like it did, but then I kept kind of coming across it the next couple days and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I should be paying attention to this."
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about TikTok is that you don't know that it's going to be something in the moment. You can think
Mhm.
like, oh, maybe I want to bookmark this for later because I feel like this could be something. But the way that trends materialize on TikTok is similar to how they materialize in the real world, where you observe something and you're like, huh, that's interesting. But then you
Mhm.
see it again or you hear it again, and then you're like, oh, wait, this is like the beginning of something larger than just like a one-off. Even like, I don't know if you have suddenly seen across TikTok comments, raw next question, what girls are
Yes.
saying on commenting on Hawkeyes. And
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things where it's like you see it once and you're like, oh, that's an interesting comment to leave on a guy's TikTok.
Uh-huh.
And then you see it again and again and again. You're like, oh, this is like a new fixation.
Or maybe for like a more like PG-13 example, the purple heart emojis. I feel like I've been seeing those in the
Yes.
comment section a lot too.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's an interesting thing about these memes too, where it's like something as simple as a purple heart can take on all of this other meaning, but then that meaning then could evolve, and a year later it means something else, but then the
Mhm.
existing lore plays into the it's just one of those crazy to be on the internet in 2024
Mhm.
is so interesting.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the times like there's like layers to these memes or like there'll be like a post that's connected to like three different trends that are going on. And it's like if you're not spending hours online every day, you're gonna like have missed part of it and you'll be confused.
100%. Yeah, you just have to be always on.
Yeah. With the man in finance trend, before we move on, I also thought
Yeah.
it was interesting how SkinCeuticals partnered with her to like make her like the woman in finance. Is that right?
Yeah, I have to say, I think they would have been a lot more successful had they done that a month earlier. I
Mm,
think the main thing with these brands getting in on these TikTok memes or just sudden trends, I
mhm,
think that the response time is so important. And I know it's really hard for brands to engage quickly, activate quickly, but I
mhm,
think that it would have been so much cooler had because it seemed like, the man in finance thing, it was so big. And then
mhm,
very quickly it became so big that it was annoying. And then it started to, rescind from the zeitgeist. And
mhm,
I think that the SkinCeuticals thing came up while it was on its downward trajectory already.
mm.
And I think it was still, it was okay because Megan didn't do a ton of brand deals, but I think that if it had happened earlier, it would have made a bigger splash.
Yeah, and then Fully Conscious Baby, the Four Seasons baby, was another fascinating trend that also I didn't envision becoming as big as it did.
Same.
Yeah, and I actually got to talk to the family, not Kate the baby, but like her parents and her aunt. So I thought that was a very fascinating situation. Why do you think it like became such a big thing that people latched onto? Like, what about the original video, which was pretty simple, do you think caught people's attention?
I think the internet loves cute things, and babies are certainly one of them. And I think that whenever there's like a cute baby or a cute animal that suddenly takes hold, it's always like there's so many cute babies in the world. Like, why that one? I mean,
Mhm.
not to jump ahead here, but also like Moo Dang is another example where it's
Yeah.
like it's a cute animal, but there's so many cute animals around. Like this one is the one that like we're all talking about. So I think a lot of times, like with these moments, it's kind of a dice roll, and it depends on what other creators or Twitterers or it depends on who picks these things up. And then if the right meme accounts and the right Twitter people and the right, media publications pick it up, then it becomes a bigger thing. So it's like more of like an ecosystem wide thing is my guess. What do you think? Why do you think that baby captured so much of like of what the internet was thinking about that week?
I will say Moo Dang is my favorite baby of the year. Sorry, Four Seasons baby, but I love Moo Dang.
Sorry.
Um,
Sorry to the Four Seasons baby.
but I think I remember seeing like someone comment that this was like a fully conscious baby. Like they were like fascinated by the fact that like she seemed so mature for her age. And then like
Yeah.
people just like took that and like ran with it and were like making those memes where they like had her, they did like a voiceover where she was speaking like a posh like British man or something like that. And I feel like it just like blew up that way. And then the Four Seasons Orlando obviously had to get involved. And they like brought the whole family to the Four Seasons Orlando, I think just a couple weekends later, like
Yes,
Memorial
that
Day
timing
weekend.
was great. Yes, and I think that that's why it worked because if they had waited too long, then it just looks like a brand trying to engage with internet culture in a way that feels a little desperate or just not relevant. And the fact that the Four Seasons was able to turn things around so quickly, was so brilliant.
And they've actually maintained that relationship too, which I think is interesting. They brought the family to a couple of their UK hotels in September, I believe. So they've
Wow.
kind of maintained like the family as kind of ambassadors, I guess, for the hotel.
I love that. And then one question I think about with, like the Four Seasons baby or even some of these Sephora tweens who have gone viral is what do their lives look like in 10 years, 15
Hmm.
years, 20 years? Like how like do they carry that on or is it just like a weird fun fact that you bring up during an icebreaker, your first day on the job? Like, do you remember
Hmm.
the Four Seasons baby? That baby is actually me.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess we'll have to see in like 15, 20 years when they start getting older.
We'll make a note to do a follow-up in 15
Okay.
years.
Yeah, I'll check back in with them.
All right, let's take a short break for this message from our sponsor.
For today's marketers, efficiency is the name of the game. But maximizing the impact of your marketing budget with a movable middles audience isn't just a theory, it's a proven fact. Based on findings from TransUnion and MMA Global, nearly a dozen brands, from consumer packaged goods to banking, boosted their ROAS by up to 23 times when they targeted movable middles, outperforming every other commonly used audience strategy. To explore how movable middles can help you make the most of your ad dollars, download TransUnion's new white paper at transunion.com/mm.
We can't really talk about 2024 without talking about Brat Summer also. I think that was probably the biggest breakout trend of the year if I had to choose one.
Definitely. I think that that defined 2024.
And there was definitely, I feel like brands definitely jumped on the chance to get into that trend, whether it was just like their like Brat green posts, like kind of rounding up some of their green products or using the Brat font to like redo their icon on their Instagram or TikTok and stuff like that. There's definitely brands everywhere in that trend.
Do you think that the reason so many brands jumped on that one is because it was so easy to engage, whether with color or
Hmm.
literally the word Brad
Hmm.
or the font? Like it just seemed like there were so many options that it felt like pretty brand safe.
Yeah.
Brands could try it out without, the man in finance thing is you really have to commit. Like there's no
Hmm.
way to try out that trend or to adapt it to your brand in a way that is like subtle.
Hmm.
Whereas with Brad it seems like a lot more corporations could
Hmm.
test it out just because it was like you could just do a little like lime green image and
Yeah.
like people get it.
Yeah, I think the accessibility of it definitely helped. Like you didn't have to make a TikTok video necessarily. Like you could just do like a static post on Instagram of just like a few products or like you were saying, just like use the word brat in a post or something. Like it was kind of just like
Yeah.
a lower lift, a lighter lift.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I feel like I know we talked about SkinCeuticals maybe being a little late with the man in finance trend. H&M, I know, partnered with Charlie XCX to have a couple of like concerts. The one in Times Square. I don't know if you remember that one last month, but those also were kind of post Brat Summer, but I feel like they worked just because like it was directly with Charlie and it was sort of like a bigger moment versus just maybe like a social campaign. Do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Like that it sort of worked?
yeah, I definitely think it worked. And I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of, Brat Summer, but Charlie XCX's tour is like she's gonna continue touring with the album. So Brat Summer isn't really over, or maybe Brat Summer is over, but like the rise of Charlie XCX is only beginning.
Yeah, Brat Summer definitely extended beyond summer because I think I
Yeah.
remember I guess we can pivot over to the very demure trend. That kind of picked up steam at the end of summer, and people were like, "Oh well, Brat Summer's over. It's going to be a demure fall." But then I feel
Yep.
like demure died off pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, it sure did. Why do you think that is?
I mean, maybe it was kind of like Man in Finance, where people were like, "Okay, like we've done this, and maybe we're kind of tired of it at this point," because it was kind of just like a phrase. There wasn't a lot else to do. Like
Yeah.
you could like with Brat Summer, you could use like the green color, you could use the font, you could do other things, but Demure was sort of limited in how much you could do.
Yeah.
So like there was a few brands like Verizon, Zillow, Synergy Kombucha, which is sort of a random partnership, but a few brands that like worked with her like right at the start of the trend. Jules LeBron, the creator, and then after that kind of initial wave, I feel like it kind of the hype was gone and it kind of faded off pretty quickly.
Yeah, very quickly that word just became too overdone almost. When everyone rushes to include a buzzword in their marketing materials, then everyone just it doesn't want to, they don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah. And I remember seeing like screenshots of someone's like email inbox where like every single subject line was like, come be demure and buy our sweatshirts. Like it was just like a very like saturation of the word like in every marketing message you were seeing.
Yes. And then it makes you want to be like anything but demure.
Yeah. There was also the Wicked movie marketing kind of like took up a lot of the year, but like really kind of rose to a head like right before the movie came out in late November. There was like kind of conversations around every single brand doing something with like pink and green. I remember like
Mhm.
people were like kind of grossed out by the pink and green mac and cheese that I forget which brand did that, but what did you think of that like marketing blitz around Wicked?
I didn't think anything could come close to the marketing blitz around the Barbie movie, and
Mm,
Wicked really seemed to have pretty much the same playbook where it was like Bombas socks, had the Wicked collab and fancy candle brand and multiple beauty brands. And it really felt like I didn't realize, honestly, that Wicked was going to be as big as it was until
mhm,
all of these campaigns started launching. And then I realized, like, oh, this is a very big cultural moment. I
uh-huh,
wasn't a theater kid, so I didn't
yeah.
quite understand. Like, but I think that I think those brand collaborations, I think consumers get fatigued by them pretty quickly. But I
Mm,
think with the way that the press tour went
yes.
with the stars, that continued to keep their names and also the movie in headlines in a way that I'm sure ultimately benefited Wicked. And of course, the holding space meme
Mm,
continues to really dominate. Like it's all over my feed in comments, even
mhm,
now. And so, like, I don't think I've gone a day without seeing the phrase holding space in like 2 weeks. And
yeah.
obviously, that is going to die down eventually. But I think that that has really helped to keep up the Wicked lore. And then people want to go see it because they want to know, like, what it's all about and,
Mhm,
what they're missing. FOMO is
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Holding space is still in my daily vocabulary, and I think it'll be there for a little bit because that was very iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I just wrote about this, but MAC Cosmetics, they actually brought that journalist to one of their stores to like hold space at the MAC store. And it was actually like a really good
Oh my
video.
God. Oh my God. Wait, what store? Do you know what, like, in the
Uh,
US or was it in the UK? Or I'm just curious.
I think it was the US.
Okay,
Very
that's
funny.
hilarious.
Yeah, and I know we only have a few minutes left, but now that we've kind of gotten up to like the most recent trends of the year, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any kind of predictions you're anticipating for next year in terms of like what the biggest social trends of next year might look like.
I think we're going to see a lot more going live. And that could
Mhm,
be, I mean, Substack has recently launched a live feature. So, fellow Substackers can go live and then their audiences can tune in. But, Instagram lives have been a thing for a while. But I think that people are finding they're more comfortable with that medium than they maybe used to be. And something I've been fascinated by for the last couple of years and think that it might be a big deal in 2025 is live stream shopping.
mhm,
There have been a number of live stream shopping startups over the last couple of years. Many of them raised a lot of VC funding and ultimately or have since folded
mm,
because, this is not a behavior. I mean, I guess it's I was going to say it's not a behavior that Americans really are used to, although QVC is an exception there. But
Yeah.
I think that the live stream shopping, that format has finally broken through with TikTok and
Hmm.
TikTok Shop, and the numbers coming out of Black Friday TikTok Shop live streams are pretty impressive. And I think that we're going to see more and more brands testing out those kinds of features because people like to experience something that feels, I don't know, not high stakes, but you're very in the moment, and
Hmm.
it's not scripted, and it just feels like you're experiencing something cool. So I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah, I know on my TikTok feed, like every two videos was like a live shopping stream on Black Friday. Like I couldn't escape it.
And did you do any of it? Did you shop any of the live streams?
I have yet to shop from TikTok Shop. I feel like a fake social media reporter, but they are kind of engaging. Like just like the fact that they're like giving you those coupons constantly and like highlighting different comments and stuff. I can see the appeal.
Yes. And if you're someone who loves the deal, and honestly, who isn't, then they're especially appealing because I mean, that's why QVC was so successful, right? Because you
Mhm.
had 5 minutes to get the deal. And if you didn't jump, then you would never get the thing. And I think that, that I remember my grandma watching that and buying so much stuff from QVC that she didn't need. But in the moment, she felt like she did. And I think we're going to see that play out for other generations via TikTok.
Yeah, well, I think that's all the time we have for today, but thanks so much again, Casey, for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. So much fun to chat.
That was Casey Lewis, author of Youth Trends newsletter After School. And I'm Jillian Follette, social media and influencer marketing reporter at Ad Age. I'd like to thank our producer, Lauren Chiardio, and invite you to subscribe to Marketer's Brief wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and happy holidays.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.